Hello there. Tonight, we'll be stepping quietly into the world of the samurai. Warriors who lived and died by codes of loyalty and honor, who shaped the history of Japan for centuries, and whose stories remain as sharp and enduring as the swords they carried. The samurai were not just fighters. They were poets, strategists, rebels, and philosophers. Their lives moved between battlefields and tea houses, duels and ink strokes, silence and spectacle. In this episode, you'll discover 100 fascinating facts about them, strange details, legendary battles, and unexpected traditions that will surprise you even as they lull you deeper into rest. If you enjoy drifting off to history, you can support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, or sharing your thoughts in the comments. But for now, there's nothing more to do. Just get comfortable, close your eyes if you wish, and let your mind follow along. Now, if you're ready, let's begin our journey into the world of the samurai. Miyamoto Musashi, Japan's most famous duelist, never lost a single fight. Miyamoto Musashi is remembered as the greatest swordsman in Japanese history. Born in the late 16th century, he fought more than 60 duels and is said never to have lost a single one. Musashi often defied tradition. In one famous duel, instead of arriving early to bow and prepare, he deliberately showed up late, unsettling his opponent. He carved a wooden sword from an oar and won the fight with a single blow. Musashi also pioneered the technique of fighting with two swords at once, a style that shocked his rivals. Later in life, he became a wandering ronin, writing a classic manual of strategy called The Book of Five Rings. He lived not only as a fighter, but as an artist, calligrapher, and thinker. His life became a legend, a reminder of the samurai spirit at its most unshakable. Samurai sometimes wore armor laced with human hair instead of silk. Samurai armor was often beautiful as well as deadly, tied together with cords of silk in vibrant colors. But not every suit was woven with elegance. Some warriors laced their armor with strands of human hair, taken from enemies or from the dead. The choice was partly practical. Hair was strong and available, but it also carried symbolic weight. Wearing the hair of others was a way of carrying power into battle, an unsettling trophy of conquest. When lacquered into place, the hair looked like dark, glistening cords winding across plates of steel. For opponents who saw such armor, the message was clear. This was a warrior who wanted to inspire fear before swords were even drawn. These grim details remind us that beneath the rituals of honor and discipline, the samurai world could also be brutally physical. The 47 Ronin became legendary for avenging their fallen master. One of the most famous samurai stories in history is that of the 47 Ronin. These were warriors left masterless after their lord was forced to commit seppuku, or ritual suicide. Bound by loyalty, they secretly plotted revenge for nearly 2 years. They disguised themselves as monks and merchants, hiding their true intentions. Finally, on a snowy night, they stormed the mansion of the man responsible for their lord's death. After a fierce battle, they killed him and presented his head at their master's grave. Having fulfilled their duty, they surrendered themselves, knowing the punishment would be death. All 47 were ordered to commit seppuku, which they did with dignity. Their story became a powerful symbol of loyalty and sacrifice, retold in plays, paintings, and countless legends. Even today, the graves of the 47 Ronin are visited as a reminder of devotion beyond life itself. Samurai could behead an enemy with a single cut in battle. The sharpness of a samurai's sword was legendary. In the chaos of battle, a skilled warrior could cut down an enemy with one swift stroke, severing the head in a single motion. Such strikes were not just feats of power, but of precision. The blade had to land perfectly, angled and delivered with practiced speed. In duels, a clean beheading was seen as proof of mastery. Heads were sometimes taken as trophies, displayed after battles to prove victory. While it may seem brutal to us, this practice reflected the world samurai lived in, a place where honor, fear, and reputation were bound together. The ability to end a fight in one stroke also fit their philosophy. Combat was not about endless exchanges, but about decisiveness. One strike, perfectly placed, could settle the outcome of battle and seal the name of the warrior. Some samurai helmets were shaped like rabbits, crabs, or even sea demons. Samurai armor was more than protection. It was theater. Helmets, or kabuto, were sometimes made in strange and startling shapes. Some were topped with enormous horns, others with twisting crests shaped like crabs, rabbits, or even sea demons. These designs served multiple purposes. They made the warrior instantly recognizable on the battlefield, a moving banner of their clan's power. They also terrified enemies, turning the samurai into a creature of myth rather than just a man in steel. Some helmets carried Buddhist symbols meant to guard the wearer spiritually in combat. Others were simply bold displays of individuality, showing wealth, creativity, or a taste for intimidation. Against a backdrop of marching soldiers, a helmet crowned with monstrous antlers or sea creature claws would be unforgettable. The samurai who wore it made sure that their presence lingered in the minds of both allies and foes. The Battle of Sekigahara in 1600 decided who would rule Japan for centuries. In the year 1600, Japan was torn by rival clans seeking dominance. The Battle of Sekigahara became the decisive clash that ended this struggle. On one misty autumn morning, more than 150,000 warriors gathered on the fields of Sekigahara, making it one of the largest samurai battles ever fought. The battle raged with arrows, spears, muskets, and swords. In the end, Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged victorious, thanks in part to betrayals and shifting alliances on the battlefield. His victory gave birth to the Tokugawa shogunate, a dynasty that would rule Japan for over 250 years. The battle not only decided who held power, but it also marked the beginning of a new era of peace, where the samurai adapted from warriors to administrators. The echoes of Sekigahara still resonate as the turning point that defined Japan's history for centuries to come. Some swords were believed to be cursed and drank the blood of their owners. While most samurai swords were revered as noble instruments of duty, some gained darker reputations. Legends grew around certain blades said to be cursed, hungering for blood and bringing misfortune to their owners. These stories often emerged when a warrior who carried a particular sword met a violent or unlucky fate. Some believed the steel itself carried a spirit, forged with emotions of anger, fear, or sorrow. A cursed sword might cause its owner to die in battle, betray their lord, or even take their own life. Such weapons were whispered about with dread, as though they were alive. Whether true or not, these tales remind us of how much reverence the samurai placed on their swords. They were more than tools, they were companions, symbols, and sometimes, in the darkest legends, hungry spirits of steel. The Mongol invasions of Japan tested the samurai against foreign armies. In the late 13th century, Japan faced a terrifying challenge: the Mongol invasions. Kublai Khan sent fleets of ships carrying tens of thousands of soldiers to conquer the islands. The samurai, accustomed to single combat and ritual duels, suddenly faced massed armies using unfamiliar tactics. The Mongols fought with bombs, flaming arrows, and coordinated cavalry charges. The battles were desperate, and at times, the Japanese seemed on the verge of defeat. But storms struck the Mongol fleets, wrecking hundreds of ships. The Japanese called these storms kamikaze, or divine winds, believing the gods had protected them. The invasions left deep scars and also lasting lessons. The samurai learned to adapt, to strengthen their defenses, and to see themselves as defenders of the nation, not just retainers of local lords. These encounters with foreign forces reshaped the way samurai saw war itself. Samurai sometimes tested new swords on the bodies of executed criminals. The sharpness and quality of a samurai sword could mean the difference between life and death in battle. To prove a new blade, some swordsmiths and warriors carried out grisly tests. They used the bodies of executed criminals, striking through them to see how cleanly the blade cut. Records were sometimes carved onto the tang of the sword, noting how many bodies it could slice in one stroke. A sword that cut flawlessly became a treasure, while one that failed could bring shame to its maker. Though disturbing, these practices show how seriously the samurai regarded their weapons. To them, a sword was more than a piece of steel. It was an extension of their spirit. And like the spirit, it had to be proven through trial. Even in death, the samurai demanded proof of perfection from the blades they carried. Some face masks were carved into terrifying snarls to hide fear. Alongside helmets and armor, samurai often wore menacing face masks called mengu. These masks could be carved into grotesque snarls, fierce grimaces, or even laughing demons. The purpose was partly psychological. They concealed the warrior's emotions, making it impossible for enemies to read fear or hesitation. They also made the samurai look inhuman, as though death itself had come to the battlefield. Some masks were lined with fabric for comfort, while others carried mustaches or teeth made of metal. Breathing holes and slots allowed speech, but the overall effect was eerie and unsettling. A samurai charging forward with a demon's face was meant to strike terror before blades even crossed. In a culture where honor and intimidation mattered as much as victory, the mask became another weapon, not for cutting or striking, but for unbalancing the enemy's mind. Samurai swords were folded up to 1,000 times during forging. The process of making a samurai sword was as much art as it was science. Swordsmiths began with layers of steel, heating, hammering, and folding the metal again and again. Some blades were folded hundreds, even up to 1,000 times, until the steel became strong, flexible, and almost free of flaws. Each fold removed impurities and distributed carbon evenly, creating a blade that could be razor-sharp yet remarkably durable. The smith's workshop was considered sacred, and rituals often accompanied the process, as though the sword were being born. When finished, the blade bore delicate wave-like patterns called heiman, marks of its inner structure that revealed the skill of its maker. For the samurai, these patterns were not just beautiful designs, but living proof of perfection in steel. A katana was believed to carry the very soul of its wielder, forged into every fold. The first samurai rose during Japan's Heian period, over 1,000 years ago. The samurai did not emerge suddenly as the noble warriors we picture today. Their origins can be traced back more than 1,000 years to Japan's Heian period, which lasted from the late 8th to the 12th century. At first, they were provincial guards and hired fighters, serving aristocrats who needed protection for their lands far from the imperial capital. These early warriors were less concerned with elegance or honor, and more with survival and skill in combat. Over generations, they became increasingly organized, forming family lineages and regional clans. Their influence grew, especially as central imperial power began to weaken. By the end of the Heian period, the samurai had transformed from local enforcers into a distinct warrior class. They were no longer simply protectors of land. They were a rising force that would soon dominate Japan's politics, culture, and identity for centuries to come. Samurai duels were sometimes fought to the death over a single insult. In samurai society, honor was everything. A casual insult, a broken promise, or even a questioning glance could lead to a duel. These contests were not always formal or ceremonial. Often they erupted suddenly, in streets, fields, or outside tea houses, sparked by anger or wounded pride. A duel could last mere seconds, ending with a single decisive strike, or stretch into drawn-out exchanges. The stakes were life and death, and both warriors understood that to withdraw was to lose honor. Stories tell of men killed for refusing to bow deeply enough, or for mocking another's swordsmanship. While Bushido idealized discipline and restraint, the reality was that samurai lived in a culture where one's reputation was constantly at risk. The blade was not only a weapon, but also the final arbiter of respect. In such a world, even the smallest insult could prove fatal. Oda Nobunaga armed his troops with muskets, changing samurai warfare forever. In the 16th century, a powerful warlord named Oda Nobunaga revolutionized samurai warfare. When Portuguese traders brought matchlock muskets to Japan, most dismissed them as unreliable toys. Nobunaga saw something different, the future of battle. At the Battle of Nadeshino in 1575, he armed thousands of his men with muskets and positioned them behind wooden palisades. As enemy cavalry charged, his troops unleashed volleys of gunfire in rotating lines, devastating the attackers. It was one of the first times firearms had been used so effectively in Japan, and it stunned rivals who relied on traditional swords and bows. Nobunaga's willingness to adapt shifted the balance of power and marked the beginning of the end for purely sword-based combat. Muskets spread quickly, forcing the samurai to reimagine tactics, armor, and strategy. From that moment on, Japanese warfare would never again be the same. Samurai women were trained to fight with naginata polearms at home. Though often overshadowed by their male counterparts, women of the samurai class were not defenseless. Many trained with the naginata, a polearm with a curved blade at its end. Its long reach allowed women to keep distance from attackers, making it especially effective in defending homes and families. These women, known as a noble geisha, were expected to stand their ground if their clan was threatened. Chronicles tell of samurai wives and daughters who fought off invaders with courage equal to that of their husbands and brothers. In times of siege, they patrolled castle walls, armed and ready. The naginata itself became symbolically associated with women, representing grace balanced with deadly force. Their role challenges the idea of samurai life being only male-dominated. Instead, it shows a world where honor and duty extended into every corner of the household, no matter one's gender. Some helmets had antlers taller than the warrior himself. Samurai armor was never only practical, it was designed to make an impression. Some helmets were adorned with enormous antlers, horns, or crests so tall they towered above the wearer's head. These decorations could be larger than the warrior himself, creating a silhouette that seemed impossible to ignore. On the battlefield, such displays announced rank, wealth, and individuality. They also served psychological purposes, making the samurai appear larger than life, almost supernatural. For allies, it was a rallying point for enemies, an unnerving sight. Of course, such elaborate helmets were impractical in prolonged combat, but their value lay in presence and intimidation. They turned the samurai into moving banners, combining art and warfare into one. Even centuries later, these extraordinary helmets survive in museums, where they still seem to radiate the same strange aura of power and spectacle they once carried into battle. The Genpei War in the 12th century created Japan's first samurai government. In the late 12th century, two powerful clans, the Terra and the Minamoto, clashed in a conflict known as the Genpei War. This struggle, lasting from 1180 to 1185, was fought across rivers, mountains, and seas, with samurai at the center of every battle. The war ended with the decisive Battle of Dan Nowara, a dramatic naval clash where the Terra clan was destroyed. From the ashes of the war, the victorious Minamoto established Japan's first shogunate, a military government ruled by a shogun, or supreme commander. This marked a turning point in Japanese history. Power shifted away from the emperor and the imperial court to the warrior class, who would dominate politics for centuries. The Genpei War was more than just a conflict between clans. It was the moment when the samurai truly rose to shape the destiny of Japan. Elite archers could pierce armor from over 100 meters away. Before the sword became the iconic weapon of the samurai, the bow reigned supreme. Elite samurai archers trained relentlessly, able to shoot with precision while standing, kneeling, or riding at full gallop. Their longbows, called yumi, were asymmetrical in shape, with the grip placed lower than the center. This design allowed them to be used effectively on horseback. A skilled archer could pierce armor from more than 100 meters away, a feat that astonished observers. In early battles, massed archery duels would precede sword clashes, with arrows raining across fields. Archery was not only a battlefield skill, but also a spiritual discipline, practiced as a form of meditation in a tradition called kudo. Even as swords and guns gained prominence, the bow remained a symbol of the samurai's mastery of patience, focus, and deadly accuracy over long distances. Samurai trained to fight in complete silence, revealing nothing. In samurai training, silence was often considered a weapon. Warriors learned to move without sound, to mask their breath, and to conceal their emotions completely. The idea was to give nothing away, no fear, no hesitation, no clue about the next strike. A silent warrior could unsettle opponents, who might grow anxious without the usual shouts or cries of combat. In duels, silence added to the tension, turning each moment into a battle of nerves before blades even met. This discipline reflected deeper teachings from Zen Buddhism, which emphasized stillness, self-control, and the emptiness of the mind. For the samurai, silence in combat was more than strategy. It was a way of mastering the self, of becoming unshakable in the face of chaos. To fight without sound was to show that victory was already certain within one's spirit. Samurai banners carried into battle were unique to each clan. Every samurai clan carried its own banners, called nobori, into battle. These tall flags, often mounted on poles strapped to a warrior's back, displayed the clan's crest or motto. On chaotic fields of combat, banners allowed soldiers to recognize allies, rally around leaders, and keep formations intact. They also served as psychological tools, announcing strength and identity before swords were ever drawn. Some banners bore simple symbols, like circles or lines, while others carried elaborate designs. In large battles, the sky could be filled with hundreds of fluttering flags, turning the conflict into a sea of colors. Losing one's banner was considered deeply shameful, while capturing an enemy's was a mark of triumph. To the samurai, banners were more than cloth. They were the soul of the clan, visible proof of loyalty and honor carried into the heart of battle. The Tokugawa shogunate forced samurai to live in castle towns under strict control. When the Tokugawa clan unified Japan in the early 17th century, they were determined to prevent rebellion. One of their strictest rules required samurai to live in castle towns, close to their lords and under constant supervision. This meant warriors could no longer retreat to distant family lands or gather independent power. Samurai life became heavily regulated: where they lived, what they wore, Even their marriages were often dictated by the shogunate's policies. The system kept warriors loyal but also transformed them. Many spent their days not on the battlefield, but in administrative roles, serving as scribes, tax collectors, or guards. While their swords remained symbols of status, daily life became more structured and less violent. This arrangement lasted for over 2 centuries, ensuring stability across Japan. Yet for many samurai, it was also the beginning of a quieter, more constrained existence. The ritual of seppuku was seen as an honorable death. For the samurai, dying with honor mattered more than living with shame. When defeat, capture, or disgrace seemed unavoidable, a warrior might choose seppuku, ritual suicide by cutting the abdomen. The act was both painful and symbolic, representing courage and self-control, even in death. Often, another trusted samurai would stand nearby to perform a swift decapitation, ending the suffering. Seppuku could also be ordered as punishment by one's lord, transforming a sentence of death into an act of loyalty and dignity. While to modern eyes it may appear cruel, to the samurai, it was a final chance to demonstrate absolute devotion to their code. Families sometimes gained respect or even rewards for the honorable death of one of their members. Seppuku reminds us that the samurai's world valued ideals of loyalty and discipline so highly that they were carried even into the last breath. Samurai horses were armored and trained to bite and kick. Samurai warfare was not fought by men alone. Horses played a crucial role, carrying warriors into the thick of battle. These mounts were often clad in protective coverings, with armor draped over their chests and flanks. Some even wore decorative headpieces to match their riders' armor. Beyond equipment, horses were trained for combat themselves, taught to kick, trample, or even bite enemies. The bond between horse and rider was vital. A skilled samurai could loose arrows or swing a sword with precision while galloping at full speed, trusting the animal beneath him to hold steady. Mounted warriors were often the most feared on the battlefield, striking with speed and momentum that foot soldiers could not match. To lose a horse in combat was a devastating blow, both emotionally and tactically. Together, samurai and horse formed a partnership that was as deadly as it was disciplined. Some clans painted their armor blood red to terrify enemies. Samurai armor was not only built for protection, but also for spectacle. Among the most striking choices was blood-red lacquer. Certain clans deliberately painted their suits in this vivid color so that the battlefield seemed awash with fire and blood when they charged. The psychological impact was immediate. Enemies facing a wall of red-armored warriors often hesitated or faltered. Beyond intimidation, red lacquer also protected the armor from weather, making it durable as well as fearsome. These bold designs announced confidence, a declaration that the warriors had no need for subtlety, only overwhelming presence. In Japanese symbolism, red also carried associations with power and life force, making it a natural choice for battle. While many suits of armor used black, gold, or blue, the sight of red samurai was unforgettable. To their opponents, they looked less like men and more like a storm of flame. Samurai discovered gunpowder weapons when the Portuguese arrived in 1543. The arrival of Portuguese traders in Japan during the year 1543 changed samurai warfare forever. Along with goods and new ideas, the Portuguese brought matchlock muskets. At first, these strange weapons seemed unreliable compared to swords and bows. But soon, Japanese warlords recognized their potential. Samurai armor had to be redesigned to resist bullets, and new tactics were developed to use volleys of gunfire in battles. Within a generation, firearms became widespread, reshaping the very nature of combat. For centuries, the image of the samurai had been tied to blades and arrows. But now the thunder of muskets echoed across fields that once rang only with steel. The Portuguese had unintentionally delivered a tool that forced warriors to adapt, blending ancient codes with modern methods. It was a turning point where tradition met technology, and the samurai found themselves in a world suddenly transformed. The code of Bushido was shaped by both Confucian and Zen ideas. Bushido, the way of the warrior, became the guiding philosophy of the samurai. It was not a single set of rules, but a blend of influences. From Confucianism came the emphasis on loyalty, duty, and the importance of social order. From Zen Buddhism came teachings of calm, mindfulness, and acceptance of death. Together, these ideas shaped a code that demanded discipline in both thought and action. Samurai were expected to live with restraint, avoid unnecessary cruelty, and remain utterly faithful to their lord. They studied not only weapons, but also calligraphy, poetry, and philosophy, seeing refinement as part of strength. Bushido was idealized more strongly during times of peace, when samurai sought to define their role beyond combat. Even though not all lived up to its ideals, the code left a lasting impression, influencing Japanese culture long after the samurai age ended. The short wakizashi sword was never taken off, even when sleeping. Samurai were always armed, even in their most private moments. Alongside the long katana, they carried a shorter blade known as the wakizashi. This sword was so closely tied to their identity that it was never removed, whether in the home, at court, or even while sweeping. It served as both a weapon and a symbol of honor. In confined spaces, the wakizashi was more practical than a long sword, making it the ideal choice for defense indoors. It was also the blade used in ritual suicide, giving it a deep symbolic weight as the samurai's ultimate companion. To be stripped of one's wakizashi was to be stripped of dignity itself. The constant presence of the sword reminds us how inseparable the warrior's identity was from his weapons. Day or night, waking or sleeping, the samurai's blade was always within reach. Samurai sometimes carried hidden weapons disguised as fans or pipes. Not every samurai weapon was obvious. In a world where duels and sudden fights could erupt without warning, some carried concealed arms disguised as everyday objects. A folding fan might be reinforced with iron ribs, capable of blocking a blade or striking with surprising force. Pipes and walking sticks were sometimes hollowed or sharpened to conceal small blades. These weapons allowed warriors to remain armed in situations where openly carrying a sword might not be permitted, such as at court or in the presence of higher-ranking officials. They also reflected a culture of constant readiness, where danger could emerge at any moment. For the samurai, skill meant more than strength. It meant adaptability. Even a fan, symbol of elegance and refinement, could become a weapon in the right hands. This blending of subtlety and lethality shows the samurai's constant balance between grace and danger. Some samurai resisted modernization and died in the Satsuma Rebellion of 1877. By the late 19th century, Japan was changing rapidly, adopting modern weapons, industry, and politics. For many samurai, these changes meant the end of their way of life. In 1877, a group of traditionalist warriors launched the Satsuma Rebellion, seeking to preserve their honor and role in society. Armed with swords, bows, and old rifles, they faced the modern imperial army equipped with artillery and modern firearms. The clash was brutal and one-sided. Despite their courage, the samurai were overwhelmed, and their leader, Seigo Takamori, chose to die by ritual suicide rather than surrender. The rebellion became the final chapter of the samurai era. Though defeated, these warriors were remembered as symbols of resistance and loyalty to tradition. Their struggle captured the tension between old and new, and their deaths marked the sunset of Japan's centuries-long warrior class. Samurai often composed death poems before their final battles. For the samurai, facing death with clarity was considered essential. One way they expressed this was through the writing of death poems, known as gissei. These short verses, often written in haiku or tanka form, were composed before entering a final battle or before committing ritual suicide. They reflected acceptance, serenity, or sharp insight into life's fleeting nature. A warrior might compare himself to a falling blossom, a drifting cloud, or a fading star. These poems were not only personal farewells, but also demonstrations of discipline, proof that even in the face of death, a samurai could remain calm and reflective. Collections of death poems survive today, offering glimpses into the minds of men who lived with both violence and beauty. To read them is to sense the stillness a samurai sought as he prepared to meet his end with dignity. Samurai armor was built to withstand arrows and even early bullets. Samurai armor, called yuroi, or later tosai gusoku, was carefully crafted to balance mobility with protection. Early suits were designed to deflect arrows, the primary weapon of war before the dominance of the sword. Plates of iron or hardened leather were laced together with silk cords, creating a flexible shell that could bend without breaking. When firearms arrived in the 16th century, armorers adapted again. Some suits were tested by firing bullets directly at the chest plate, leaving a small dent called a tameshi, proof that it had stopped the shot. These bullet-tested suits became prized possessions, showing both craftsmanship and resilience. Though heavy, weighing as much as 60 pounds, armor was built to move with the body rather than against it. To the samurai, a suit of armor was more than protection. It was a second skin, a blend of artistry and engineering forged for survival. Some samurai sharpened their helmets' crests into hidden blades. A samurai's helmet, or kabuto, was often topped with an ornamental crest, known as a midate. Many of these were purely decorative, shaped like horns, moons, or clan symbols. But some warriors took the idea further, sharpening their crests into actual blades. In close combat, these protrusions could slash an opponent who came too near. Helmets might also be used to butt or strike, turning a piece of armor into an unexpected weapon. This kind of ingenuity reflected the samurai's constant awareness that battle was unpredictable. Any part of their gear, even a symbol of identity, could be adapted for survival. The helmet was both a marker of pride and a final line of defense. By sharpening its crest, a warrior showed not only boldness, but also a willingness to blur the line between ornament and lethality. Even beauty could be deadly on the battlefield. Samurai sometimes used smoke bombs to confuse enemies. While the samurai are often remembered for their elegance and discipline, they were also practical and inventive. In battle, some warriors carried small smoke bombs made from gunpowder and natural ingredients. When lit, these devices produced thick clouds that could obscure vision, break formations, or allow a quick retreat. In sieges, smoke might fill castle courtyards, sowing chaos among defenders. The tactic may seem out of place alongside swords and bows, but it reveals a deeper truth. Victory mattered more than ritual. The samurai embraced strategy as much as strength, drawing from lessons in Chinese and Japanese military texts. A battlefield was a shifting space of confusion, and those who could control the senses of the enemy gained the upper hand. Smoke bombs were one of many tools that proved the samurai were not only fighters, but also tacticians willing to use every advantage they could. Many samurai became bureaucrats during times of peace, trading swords for pens. After centuries of war, Japan entered a long period of peace under the Tokugawa shogunate. For the samurai, this change meant that their traditional role as warriors began to fade. Without constant battles, many were reassigned to administrative duties, collecting taxes, overseeing land, or keeping records. Their swords remained symbols of status, but their daily tools were brushes and ink rather than blades. Some embraced this shift, becoming scholars, teachers, or officials. Others resented it, feeling that their martial spirit was being dulled. Over generations, the samurai evolved from a class of warriors into something closer to a noble bureaucracy. Yet the ideals of discipline, loyalty, and honor persisted. Even in peaceful roles, the warrior ethos remained. This transformation reveals how adaptable the samurai were, reshaping their identity to fit a changing Japan while still clinging to the symbols of their past. Some warriors painted their teeth black to appear more fearsome. Among the stranger practices of samurai culture was ohaguro, the blackening of teeth. Using a mixture of iron filings, vinegar, and other ingredients, warriors and nobles stained their teeth until they shone jet black. For men, the effect was intimidating, adding to the grim appearance of armored faces behind masks. For women of the samurai class, it was a mark of refinement and beauty. The practice had both practical and symbolic purposes. The coating helped prevent tooth decay, but it also signaled status, separating the upper classes from commoners. In battle, the sight of a snarling mask paired with gleaming black teeth could unsettle opponents, making the samurai look less human and more like a figure from legend. Though strange to modern eyes, ohaguro reflected the way appearance was carefully cultivated in samurai society. Every detail was part of the performance of power. Samurai studied Chinese military texts like Sun Tzu's Art of War. The samurai did not rely on instinct alone in battle. They studied strategy and philosophy, often turning to Chinese classics for guidance. Among the most influential was Sun Tzu's Art of War, a text that emphasized deception, adaptability, and the importance of knowing both oneself and the enemy. Samurai leaders also studied works like the Six Secret Teachings and the writings of Confucian scholars, blending them with Japanese traditions. These texts offered insights beyond tactics. They spoke to discipline, morality, and the role of the warrior in society. By combining martial training with intellectual study, the samurai elevated themselves above mere soldiers. They saw strategy as an art and wisdom as a weapon equal to the sword. Their devotion to study shows that the path of the warrior was as much about the mind as about strength of arms. A skilled swordsman could cut a man down before he drew his blade. Speed was one of the most prized qualities in a samurai duel. Masters of the sword trained endlessly to strike in the instant an opponent reached for his weapon. Techniques like ii-jutsu emphasized drawing and cutting in one seamless motion, leaving no time for defense. The result was often a duel that ended in seconds. Observers described the silence, the sudden flash of steel, and then the stillness after one man fell. For the victor, it was proof of both reflexes and inner calm, the ability to act without hesitation. To falter even slightly meant death. These moments embodied the essence of the samurai's way: clarity of mind, decisiveness, and mastery of technique. A duel could be over so quickly that it felt almost like a ritual rather than a fight. In those heartbeats, life and death balanced on the edge of a single motion. The tea ceremony was once considered essential warrior training. Though best known for combat, samurai were also trained in arts of stillness and refinement. Among these was the tea ceremony, or chanoyu, which became closely associated with warrior culture. Preparing and serving tea required attention to detail, humility, and calm presence. For samurai, the ritual was more than social. It was mental training. a way of practicing discipline outside of battle. The quiet movements of whisking tea, arranging utensils, and bowing created a rhythm that mirrored the precision of swordplay. In the 16th century, the tea master Sen no Rikyu taught that the ceremony embodied harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility, values deeply resonant with Bushido. Warriors learned that strength was not only about force, but also about balance. By mastering the art of tea, samurai showed that true discipline extended beyond the battlefield into every aspect of life. Samurai women were expected to defend their homes to the death. For women of the samurai class, loyalty and courage were no less important than for men. In times of invasion or siege, they were expected to take up weapons and defend the household. Many trained with the naginata, a long polong suited to holding off attackers. Chronicles tell of samurai wives and daughters who stood atop castle walls, hurling stones, shooting arrows, or leading groups of retainers when their husbands were away. The expectation was clear: surrender was dishonor, but defense to the last breath was duty. Some women even committed seppuku to avoid capture, showing the same resolve as their male counterparts. Their stories reveal a side of samurai culture often overlooked, one where women bore the weight of the warrior code within the household. In defending home and family, they upheld the same ideals of honor that defined the samurai way. Helmets sometimes had giant crests shaped like crescent moons. The samurai helmet, or kabuto, was one of the most iconic pieces of their armor. While many were plain and functional, others carried extravagant crests that announced individuality and power. One popular design was the crescent moon, arcing across the front of the helmet in gleaming metal. These crescents could be enormous, curving above the warrior's head like a rising blade of light. They symbolized cycles of time, guidance, and celestial power, connecting the samurai to forces greater than themselves. On the battlefield, such helmets made their wearers instantly recognizable, rallying troops and intimidating foes. Combined with armor polished in lacquer, a samurai wearing a crescent moon helm would cut a striking silhouette against the sky. These designs remind us that war in samurai Japan was as much about presence and symbolism as it was about steel. Every crest told a story of identity and ambition. Some warriors shaved their heads to keep helmets secure. The samurai hairstyle was more than fashion, it was practical. Many shaved the tops of their heads, leaving only a long strip of hair tied into a top knot, or chonmage. This unusual style ensured helmets fit snugly without slipping during battle. Sweat and long hair could make armor uncomfortable, so shaving improved comfort as well. Over time, the look became a mark of status, instantly identifying someone as a member of the warrior class. It was both a badge of honor and a necessity of combat. When the samurai era ended, the government eventually banned the hairstyle, symbolizing Japan's shift into modern times. But in portraits, scrolls, and preserved helmets, the top knot remains an enduring image of the samurai's distinct identity. Something as simple as a haircut became a symbol of discipline, practicality, and belonging to a tradition that lasted for centuries. Samurai sometimes carried iron clubs called kanabo to smash armor. While swords are the best-known samurai weapons, they were not the only choice. Some warriors carried massive iron clubs called kanabo, covered in spikes or ridges. These brutal weapons were designed to smash through armor, shatter bones, and break shields. Wielding one required immense strength, and stories describe warriors who could flatten gates or knock men from their horses with a single swing. The kanabo became a weapon of intimidation as much as destruction. In folklore, even demons were often depicted carrying them, linking the club to overwhelming power. Though slower and less graceful than a katana, the kanabo was a reminder that not all combat was elegant. Sometimes raw force decided the outcome. For the samurai, who trained in many weapons, the ability to wield such a heavy club showed versatility and strength. It was proof that the warrior's art included both precision and sheer might. The decline of samurai began with the arrival of firearms. For centuries, the sword and bow defined the samurai. But when firearms entered Japan in the 16th century, everything began to change. Muskets could pierce armor, strike from distance, and be used by large groups of soldiers with minimal training. The traditional image of two warriors meeting in single combat began to fade, replaced by mass volleys of gunfire. As firearms spread, armor had to adapt, but no steel could withstand bullets forever. Samurai found themselves adjusting tactics, leading infantry instead of fighting as lone champions. Over time, the symbolic power of the sword grew even as its practical use diminished. By the 19th century, modern armies with rifles and artillery rendered the samurai obsolete. Yet, rather than disappearing, they transformed into figures of legend. The decline of their battlefield role only deepened their mystique, turning them into enduring symbols of honor and tradition. Samurai often memorized entire battle manuals by heart. Discipline extended far beyond sword practice. Samurai were expected to study military manuals that outlined tactics, formations, and the proper conduct of war. Some warriors memorized these texts completely, able to recite passages or apply principles instantly. Manuals describe everything from how to fortify a castle to the correct placement of banners on the battlefield. They also included moral guidance, reminding samurai to remain loyal, courageous, and restrained. Learning these works was seen as part of the same training as practicing with bow or blade. Knowledge of strategy was considered just as important as skill in combat. A commander who lacked understanding of these principles was unworthy of leadership. By committing manuals to memory, samurai preserved the teachings of past generations, ensuring that the art of war was handed down intact. In this way, the wisdom of old masters lived on within each new warrior. Samurai armor sometimes jingled loudly to unnerve enemies. Most armor was designed to be quiet, but some samurai deliberately wore suits that jingled or rattled. The clinking of metal plates and chains would echo as they marched, announcing their approach like a rolling drum. The sound served as psychological warfare, reminding opponents of the disciplined force closing in. In night battles, the jingling could strike fear before the enemy even saw the warriors. It was the opposite of stealth, a deliberate embrace of noise as a weapon. For allies, the sound was also reassuring, a constant signal that comrades stood nearby. Combined with masks, horns, and banners, the noise was part of a larger performance designed to dominate the senses of friend and foe alike. In samurai warfare, victory was not only physical, it was also psychological. Even the sound of armor could become a tool for shaping the battlefield. The last samurai battles were fought with both swords and modern guns. By the 19th century, Japan was rapidly modernizing. Still, in the final samurai uprisings, warriors marched carrying both traditional swords and modern firearms. In clashes like the Satsuma Rebellion, rifles and cannons thundered, while katana gleamed in desperate charges. Some accounts describe warriors cutting down enemies even under heavy gunfire, their swords flashing among clouds of smoke. For many, it was not only battle but a final statement of identity. To carry the katana, even when rifles were more effective, was to declare loyalty to the old ways. These battles symbolized the collision of two eras, the medieval traditions of Bushido against the unstoppable tide of industrial warfare. Though the samurai were defeated, their willingness to fight with swords alongside guns created some of the most dramatic images in Japanese history. sealing their place as legends rather than fading quietly into foul obscurity. Seppuku was sometimes ordered as punishment, not just voluntary suicide. Although often remembered as a personal choice, seppuku was also imposed as a sentence. A samurai found guilty of treason, corruption, or failure might be commanded by his lord to take his own life. In such cases, the ritual was highly formal. The condemned warrior would prepare, write a farewell poem, and dress in white robes. Witnesses gathered, and the act was performed with solemn dignity. By allowing a disgraced warrior to die by his own hand, lords preserved both their authority and the appearance of honor. Families of the condemned often kept their lands or titles, softening the punishment's impact on loved ones. In this way, seppuku balanced justice with tradition, turning death into a final demonstration of loyalty. Though grim, it reflected the samurai belief that dignity in death was as important as conduct in life. Even punishment carried a ritual of respect. Samurai sometimes burned villages to starve enemy armies. Warfare in samurai Japan was not always defined by duels and heroic clashes. Strategy could be ruthless. Armies sometimes burned fields, villages, and storehouses to deprive enemies of supplies. Without food or shelter, opposing forces weakened quickly, even without a decisive battle. This scorched earth approach was devastating for peasants, who suffered most from the destruction. Yet it was seen as a legitimate tactic, part of the harsh realities of survival in prolonged wars. Chronicles describe entire regions left barren, their people forced to flee or starve, while victorious lords expanded their control. Such actions reveal a side of samurai warfare often forgotten, one where strategy and cruelty intertwined. Behind the noble image of warriors in armor lay the reality that power was secured not only by swords, but also by fire and hunger, wielded as weapons in the struggle for dominance. Some families raised generations of female warriors called onobujeshia. While samurai men are the most famous, some families also raised generations of female warriors. These women, called onobujeshia, trained with weapons like the naginata and bow. They defended their homes, led retainers, and sometimes even commanded troops in battle. Chronicles record women who rode into combat alongside their husbands or who rallied forces during sieges. Passing down martial skills from mother to daughter, these families preserved traditions that defied expectations of the time. In certain clans, it was considered dishonorable for a woman not to be trained in defense. The stories of onobujeshia expand our understanding of samurai culture, showing it was not confined to men alone. Their bravery ensured that the ideals of loyalty and courage were not only family values but living realities for both genders. Their legacy continues to inspire, proving that the warrior spirit was shared across generations. Messages were sometimes written on arrow feathers and shot across fields. In the chaos of battle, communication was vital. One ingenious method used by samurai was writing messages on the feathers of arrows. These arrows were then shot into enemy camps, carrying warnings, challenges, or commands. Sometimes they demanded surrender, other times they taunted opponents. In sieges, messages fired this way could rally allies trapped inside or deliver threats to those defending. The practice blended warfare with ritual, turning arrows into carriers of words as well as weapons. Receiving such an arrow must have been unsettling, a sharp reminder that the enemy could strike both physically and psychologically. This form of communication shows how the samurai combined creativity with combat. On a battlefield filled with shouting, drums, and banners, the sudden arrival of a feathered message could change morale or strategy instantly. It was proof that words, too, could fly like arrows toward their target. Samurai loyalty was pledged not to the emperor, but to their lord. Although Japan had emperors throughout the samurai era, the emperor's power was often symbolic rather than practical. Samurai swore loyalty to their daimyo, or feudal lord, who provided them with land, stipends, and protection. This bond was deeply personal, creating networks of loyalty that shaped the entire political landscape. To betray one's lord was to lose honor and face severe consequences, often ending in death. The emperor remained a sacred figure, descended from the sun goddess in legend, but real authority rested in the hands of military leaders. This distinction defined the samurai world. Their code of Bushido demanded absolute faithfulness to the one they served directly. Over centuries, this system created both stability and conflict, as competing lords clashed for dominance. Loyalty was the glue that bound samurai to their masters, and sometimes the chain that dragged them into ruin. Some helmets had built-in horns meant to clash with others. Samurai helmets were not always delicate works of art. Some were designed with practical, if brutal, features. Certain helmets carried horns or protrusions built for direct clashes, allowing warriors to collide headfirst in combat. In tightly packed melees, these horns could wound or unbalance an opponent, turning the helmet into a hidden weapon. Combined with the weight of armored momentum, even a headbutt became deadly. Horns also gave the samurai a fearsome appearance, echoing creatures from Japanese mythology. Seeing a warrior charge forward with a helmet crowned in curved, gleaming horns must have been intimidating, especially in the chaos of battle. The designs blurred the line between intimidation and utility, ensuring that every piece of armor could be useful. For the samurai, nothing was wasted. Even a helmet could be transformed into a tool of combat, as well as a symbol of presence. Samurai armor sometimes included spikes to stop grappling. In close combat, an enemy might try to grab or pull a warrior to the ground. To counter this, some samurai armor was fitted with spikes, especially on the shoulders or arms. These small protrusions made it dangerous for opponents to seize hold, forcing them to keep their distance. The spikes were not large enough to hinder movement, but they served as subtle defenses, discouraging wrestling or holds. This adaptation reflected the constant evolution of samurai gear, shaped by centuries of conflict. Grappling was common in Japanese martial arts, and armorers understood that victory depended on preparing for every possibility. Spiked armor showed the samurai's awareness that battle was not only about swordplay, but also about control of the body. Even the act of reaching for an opponent could turn into a mistake. Protection became deterrence, and defense became another way to dominate the fight. A skilled samurai could fire arrows accurately while galloping at full speed. Archery was central to the earliest samurai, and perhaps their most celebrated skill was yabusame, horseback archery. Warriors trained to guide their horses with their knees, while drawing longbows nearly as tall as themselves. At full gallop, they could release arrows with remarkable accuracy, striking targets that blurred past in moments. The discipline required immense balance and focus, combining horsemanship with the strength of an archer. Yabusame was not only a battlefield skill, but also a ritual practice, performed at shrines to demonstrate devotion and control. Hitting targets while riding at speed symbolized harmony between rider, horse, and bow. Observers described the silence before the shot, the thunder of hooves, and then the sudden whistle of an arrow cutting the air. This blending of speed and precision became one of the iconic arts of the samurai, proving their mastery of body and spirit alike. Forging a master blade could take months of work. The creation of a katana was not rushed. Master swordsmiths spent months shaping, folding, and tempering the steel. Each step required skill passed down over generations, smelting the iron, layering the metal, heating it to the perfect glow, and hammering it with precise rhythm. Clay was carefully applied along the blade before quenching, controlling how the steel cooled and giving the sword its distinctive curved shape. This process also created the shimmering Haman, the wave-like line along the edge that marked the meeting of hard and soft steel. The result was a weapon both sharp and resilient, capable of cutting cleanly without breaking. For many smiths, the act was spiritual. They worked in quiet, as though conducting a ritual, believing the blade carried a spirit of its own. When complete, a katana was more than a tool of war. It was a masterpiece of art and devotion. Samurai castles were designed with deadly traps and arrow slits. The castles of feudal Japan were more than grand residences. They were fortresses built for war. Thick stone walls sloped outward to deflect climbing attackers, and narrow windows called yazama allowed defenders to fire arrows while remaining shielded. Some castles had hidden compartments, false floors, or trapdoors that could confuse or ambush intruders. Steep, twisting stairways forced attackers to slow down, making them easy targets. In sieges, these defenses could mean the difference between survival and defeat. Yet castles were also symbols of power, towering above towns and countryside as visible reminders of a lord's authority. For the samurai who defended them, the architecture itself became a weapon, turning stone and wood into part of their arsenal. Even in times of peace, the looming walls of a castle reminded everyone who held power. To approach such a fortress uninvited was to risk entering a carefully designed trap. Samurai poetry and calligraphy were considered signs of refinement and discipline. The samurai were expected to cultivate not only strength, but also elegance. Poetry and calligraphy were essential parts of their education. Writing with brush and ink required patience, control, and an appreciation for beauty. A single poem might capture the fleeting image of a blossom or the stillness of a moonlit night. These arts were not separate from warrior life. They complemented it. The same steady hand that drew a sword was trained to form graceful characters on paper. Calligraphy revealed a person's state of mind, just as swordsmanship did. A warrior who wrote with balance and clarity was seen as possessing discipline in all things. Poetry, too, was a way to confront impermanence, echoing the samurai's acceptance of life's fragility. Through art, they expressed the stillness behind the storm, proving that refinement was as vital to the samurai spirit as the clash of steel. Samurai sometimes trained blindfolded to heighten their senses. Training was not limited to strength and skill alone. Some samurai practiced combat blindfolded, forcing themselves to rely on hearing, touch, and intuition. The clatter of footsteps, the rush of air from a swing, even the faint creak of armor could reveal an opponent's movements. These exercises sharpened awareness, teaching warriors to remain calm when sight was limited or obstructed. Such training reflected the influence of Zen teachings, which emphasized clarity of perception beyond the eyes. On a battlefield filled with dust, smoke, and confusion, vision could not always be trusted. A warrior who had trained without sight could still act with confidence. Blindfolded practice symbolized the idea that a samurai must be prepared for every possibility, even fighting in darkness. To master the sword was to master oneself and to remain unshaken even when the world could no longer be clearly seen. Some suits of armor were passed down for centuries. Samurai armor was often so well made that it endured for generations. Families treasured these suits, repairing and relacing them so that fathers could pass them down to sons. Over time, armor became heirlooms, carrying the scars of past battles and the pride of ancestors. A suit might contain not only steel and silk, but also a story of wars fought, lords served, and victories earned. Wearing such armor connected a samurai to his lineage, reminding him that he carried not just his own honor, but that of his family. Some pieces of armor are preserved even today, their lacquer still gleaming despite being centuries old. To stand before them is to glimpse the continuity of samurai tradition. For the warriors themselves, donning ancestral armor was a way of wearing history, stepping into the same steel that once shielded generations before them. They often studied strategy from Chinese military classics. The samurai were not isolated from the wider world of ideas. They read and studied military texts from China, where centuries of warfare had produced volumes of strategy. Works like The Art of War by Sun Tzu, The 36 Stratagems, and other classics were translated and circulated among Japan's warrior class. These texts emphasized cunning, adaptability, and the balance of strength and deception. Samurai leaders used them to shape campaigns, sieges, and duels. Some passages were memorized word for word, recited like proverbs. The fusion of Chinese wisdom with Japanese practice created a uniquely samurai approach to war, blending foreign insight with local traditions. Even beyond the battlefield, these writings influenced how warriors thought about politics, leadership, and life itself. They served as reminders that victory was not only about force, but also about understanding, patience, and the careful application of knowledge. Samurai swords were so valued they could buy entire estates. A masterfully forged katana was far more than a weapon. It was a treasure. The craftsmanship, time, and ritual invested in its making meant that a single blade could equal the value of land, or even an entire estate. Some swords were passed from lord to lord as gifts of immense prestige, sealed with ceremonies that elevated them almost to sacred relics. Owning such a blade was proof of wealth and status, but it also carried responsibility. To lose or dishonor, it could ruin a family's reputation. These swords were sometimes given names, treated as living beings with their own spirit. In a society where land was scarce and power was contested, a blade's worth spoke volumes. The fact that steel could be valued alongside fields, homes, and villages shows how deeply the samurai believed that a sword embodied far more than metal. Some helmets were lined with fur for warmth in winter. While samurai armor often looks rigid and ceremonial in museums, it was also designed for real-world use. Japan's winters could be bitterly cold, especially in mountain campaigns, and helmets of steel were far from comfortable in freezing air. To protect themselves, some warriors lined the inside of their kabuto with fur, providing warmth and cushioning. These furs came from animals like deer, foxes, or bears, adding an element of luxury as well as practicality. For wealthier samurai, the lining might even be chosen for its symbolic meaning, believed to carry protective or spiritual power. The contrast is striking. An object built for war, softened with a layer of animal fur, blending harshness with comfort. This detail reminds us that samurai life was not only about combat and ritual, but also about endurance, surviving long campaigns in nature's elements as well as on the battlefield. Samurai armor included iron plates sewn into silk jackets. Not all armor looked like the grand suits seen in films. Lighter options existed for speed and mobility. One type was a jacket with small iron plates sewn between layers of silk or cloth. Known as kiko, these hidden protections could be worn beneath robes or combined with larger armor. From the outside, such jackets often looked ordinary, but inside they contained a secret network of hexagonal plates arranged like a tortoise shell. The design gave flexibility while still deflecting cuts from blades. Samurai who wore these garments could move quickly in close quarters, appearing almost unarmored until struck. This type of hidden armor highlights how varied samurai equipment was and how much thought went into balancing strength, speed, and surprise. Even clothing could become a shield, allowing a warrior to walk confidently, protected by iron concealed in folds of silk. Samurai sometimes painted their armor with family mottos. Beyond crests and colors, some samurai personalized their armor with painted inscriptions of mottos or phrases. These could be words of encouragement, expressions of loyalty, or reminders of ancestral duty. Written across chest plates, shoulder guards, or banners, such inscriptions transformed armor into a moving canvas of identity. They were seen not only by allies but also by enemies, carrying messages of determination into battle. A phrase might remind the warrior to face death without fear or to strike without hesitation. These mottos connected the individual to the legacy of their clan, turning steel into a declaration of lineage. In a world where reputation meant survival, such inscriptions were both practical and symbolic. They reminded the samurai that every action reflected more than themselves. It reflected the family, the ancestors, and the name they carried into every clash of war. Some samurai fought with giant wooden mallets instead of blades. Not every warrior carried a sword. Some used massive wooden mallets called ono, or war hammers, often reinforced with iron. These weapons looked simple but could shatter shields, break doors, and crush armor with sheer force. They were especially useful in sieges, where breaking defenses mattered more than elegance. The sight of a samurai swinging such a weapon was terrifying, its weight capable of knocking men to the ground with a single strike. In folklore and art, warriors wielding giant hammers often symbolized raw strength and determination, balancing the refined image of sword masters. For the samurai, versatility was key. Whether carrying a blade, bow, or heavy mallet, they were expected to adapt to whatever the situation required. These mallets remind us that beneath the iconic image of the katana lay a much broader world of weaponry, where even wood and iron could rule the battlefield. Samurai often trained in archery contests that lasted for days. Archery was not just a battlefield skill, it became a form of competition and ritual. One famous event was the Toshiya, a contest held at Kyoto's Sandusan-Dundo Temple. Archers stood at one end of the hall, more than 100 meters long, and fired arrow after arrow, attempting to hit targets at the far end. The contests could last for days, with archers loosing thousands of arrows without pause. Success required not only skill but endurance and mental focus. Records tell of warriors who shot over 8,000 arrows in a single day. These events were both religious offerings and public spectacles, drawing crowds to witness feats of precision. For the samurai, such contests embodied discipline and persistence. They were opportunities to prove mastery outside of war, showing that patience and determination mattered as much as raw strength. In silence and repetition, they honed both body and spirit. Armor plates were sometimes inscribed with prayers for protection. For the samurai, armor was not only a shield of steel, but also a vessel of belief. Some warriors had Buddhist sutras, Shinto prayers, or personal charms inscribed on their armor plates. The words were etched or painted inside, close to the body, where they might be unseen, but always present. These inscriptions invoked divine protection, asking for courage, clarity, or victory in battle. In a world where death was always near, such prayers were a way of carrying spiritual strength alongside physical defenses. For some, it was as though the armor itself became sacred, blessed with words that turned iron into a guardian spirit. These small details reveal how samurai balanced ritual with practicality, seeking protection not only through craft but also through faith. To wear armor inscribed with prayers was to step onto the battlefield armored by both steel and the unseen power of belief. Samurai sometimes tattooed protective symbols on their bodies. Alongside their armor and weapons, some samurai carried protection etched into their very skin. Tattoos of Buddhist guardians, mythical beasts, or protective symbols were believed to ward off danger and give strength in battle. Unlike decorative tattoos of later Japanese culture, these markings were often hidden beneath clothing and armor, private talismans for the warrior alone. In moments of fear or exhaustion, a glance at the ink could remind a samurai of courage or divine support. The practice was not universal, and in later centuries, tattoos became associated with outcasts rather than elites. But for some warriors, they were sacred bonds. Carving protection into one's own flesh showed a willingness to carry faith permanently. These tattoos remind us that the samurai's search for security extended beyond steel, into rituals, prayers, and even the permanence of ink beneath the skin. They trained with wooden swords that would still kill with one blow. In practice halls, samurai often used wooden swords called bokken. While safer than steel, these weapons were far from harmless. A strike from a bokken, delivered with full force, could break bones, crack skulls, and even kill. Stories tell of masters who defeated opponents in duels using only wooden blades, proving that skill outweighed material. Training with bokken allowed warriors to practice techniques with speed and intensity while reducing the risk of cutting injuries. For students, it was a reminder that even practice carried danger, discipline, and respect were essential. The bokken also became a symbolic weapon in its own right, representing mastery over control and restraint. In the hands of the true swordsman, even wood was deadly. The enduring use of wooden swords shows that the samurai's art was never only about the sharpness of steel, but about the sharpness of skill. Some castles had walls sloped to deflect arrows and bullets. Samurai castles were marvels of defensive design. Instead of building walls straight up, many were constructed with outward-sloping bases of stone, known as ishigaki. These angled surfaces served multiple purposes. They made climbing difficult, prevented erosion, and helped deflect incoming arrows or bullets. Attackers attempting to scale the walls found themselves slipping or exposed to defenders above. At the same time, defenders could rain down arrows, rocks, or boiling water from secure positions. These slopes were part of a broader system of layered defenses, including moats, gates, and winding paths designed to confuse enemies. The elegance of the design matched its effectiveness, blending architectural beauty with deadly practicality. Today, many castle ruins in Japan still preserve these stone walls, standing as silent reminders of the samurai era. Even without their towers and gates, the sloping stones tell the story of warfare written into architecture. Some samurai carried tanto daggers hidden in their sleeves. The tanto was a small, straight-bladed dagger, often no longer than a man's forearm. While it could be carried openly, some samurai concealed it within the folds of their robes or sleeves. The blade was useful in close quarters where a long sword could not be drawn, and it also served as a last line of defense if disarmed. In courtly settings where wearing larger weapons might be forbidden, the tanto allowed warriors to remain discreetly armed. For women of the samurai class, the dagger was sometimes carried for protection or as a means to perform ritual suicide in times of capture. Despite its size, the tanto held deep symbolic weight, representing both honor and readiness. In moments of crisis, it reminded warriors that even when stripped of armor and sword, they were never truly defenseless. The dagger was a quiet, constant shadow of the samurai spirit. Samurai sometimes wore masks shaped like demons from folklore. Masks, or mengu, were often designed to intimidate, but some went further, crafted into the likeness of demons from Japanese folklore. Fierce faces with bulging eyes, snarling teeth, or devilish grins transformed samurai into otherworldly figures on the battlefield. These masks blurred the line between man and spirit, projecting the idea that the warrior embodied supernatural power. For enemies, the sight of such a mask in the chaos of combat could be terrifying. For the wearer, it was a shield not only for the face, but also for the emotions, fear, or doubt could be hidden behind an unchanging expression of wrath. Some masks even carried mustaches or exaggerated noses, adding strange personality to their menace. In every case, they reinforced the samurai's role as both soldier and symbol, reminding allies and opponents alike that war was as much about presence as it was about steel. The distinctive samurai top-knot hairstyle signaled their rank. The samurai's hairstyle, known as the chonmage, became one of their most recognizable features. The top of the head was shaved, while the remaining hair was oiled and tied into a knot at the back. Though practical, the shaved crown helped helmets fit securely. The style also carried social meaning. The size and neatness of the knot could signal rank and refinement, separating samurai from commoners. Over time, it became a visual mark of class, instantly identifying someone as a member of the warrior elite. When Japan modernized in the 19th century, the government eventually banned the top knot as part of reforms meant to break with old traditions. Yet its image endures, preserved in scrolls, prints, and films. To see the silhouette of a samurai's top knot is to recognize not just a hairstyle, but a symbol of identity, discipline, and belonging. Samurai children began weapons training at age 5. The life of a samurai began early. From the age of 5, children of the warrior class were introduced to weapons, discipline, and the expectations of their role. Training started with wooden swords, archery practice, and lessons in etiquette. They were taught to bow correctly, sit in formal posture, and speak with respect, reflecting the code of Bushido even in daily life. Stories tell of young boys being awakened at night to test their alertness or being sent into dark rooms to confront fear. Girls of samurai families too received training, especially with the naginata, to defend their homes. By adolescence, many were already proficient with sword, bow, or spear. This early start ensured that by adulthood, a samurai's skills were second nature. Their entire upbringing was shaped around one purpose: to embody loyalty, courage, and the discipline of the warrior tradition from the very first years of life. Some samurai practiced cutting through multiple straw mats at once. To test their skill and strength, samurai practiced tameshigiri, the art of cutting rolled straw mats with a single stroke. These mats, when soaked in water, mimicked the resistance of flesh and bone. Masters of the sword could slice through several layers at once, sometimes even cutting multiple targets in succession without slowing. The exercise demanded perfect form, angle, grip, and follow-through. All had to align. Mistakes would cause the blade to stick or the cut to fail, exposing flaws in technique. While it may sound simple, true mastery was rare, and even small imperfections were revealed in the clean or jagged edges left behind. Beyond training, such cutting tests symbolized precision and control, reminding warriors that victory depended not on brute force alone, but on the harmony of body, blade, and spirit. Each stroke was a meditation as much as an act of practice. Samurai women sometimes committed seppuku rather than be captured. The code of honor applied not only to men. Women of samurai families, when faced with defeat or capture, sometimes chose to take their own lives in acts of seppuku. Unlike men who typically used the short wakizashi sword, women often carried a small dagger called a kaikon. They would retreat to private quarters, bind their legs together to remain dignified, and end their lives to avoid the shame of capture. These acts, though tragic, were seen as demonstrations of courage and loyalty. They preserved family honor and denied enemies the satisfaction of taking them alive. Chronicles and plays recount stories of women who faced their deaths with the same composure as their husbands or fathers. In these moments, the samurai ideal of dignity in death was upheld across genders, revealing how deeply the code of honor permeated every corner of the warrior household. Some armor suits had secret compartments for documents or money. Samurai armor was not only protection, but also practical equipment for long campaigns. Some suits were built with hidden compartments within the layers of plates or under flaps of cloth. These spaces could hold small documents, folded letters, or even coins. In times of war, when carrying a chest or pouch was impractical, such compartments allowed warriors to safeguard crucial information or valuables directly on their bodies. They also served as hiding places for charms, prayers, or personal tokens. The existence of these secret spaces reveals that samurai life was not only about combat, but also about strategy, logistics, and survival. To wear armor was to carry one's identity, one's protection, and sometimes one's secrets. A warrior walking into battle might be armored not just with steel, but with messages, wealth, or words that could decide the outcome of war as surely as a sword. A samurai's family crest was displayed on his armor. Every samurai clan carried a unique crest, known as a mon, a symbol that represented their lineage, identity, and honor. These crests were displayed on armor, banners, and clothing, ensuring that even in the confusion of battle, allies and enemies could recognize them. Some crests were simple, circles, lines, or flowers, while others were elaborate designs of animals, plants, or mythical creatures. To wear the family crest was to carry generations of history into battle. Losing or dishonoring it was unthinkable. Beyond war, the crest appeared on everyday items, from household goods to documents, tying the samurai to his ancestors in every aspect of life. In a world where loyalty and lineage meant everything, the crest was more than decoration. It was the visible heart of a family's pride, carried proudly on the body of every warrior who bore its name. Some crests were hidden inside helmets to protect identity. While many crests were displayed openly, some samurai chose to hide their family symbols inside their helmets. These secret markings might be engraved on the interior metal or stitched into the lining, unseen by outsiders. The reasons varied. In battle, concealing a crest could protect a warrior's identity, preventing enemies from knowing which clan he belonged to. It also ensured that even if captured or killed, the family's honor was shielded from disgrace. At the same time, the hidden crest remained close to the warrior, a private reminder of loyalty and lineage. This balance of secrecy and devotion shows the complexity of samurai life, where appearances mattered, but so did inner faithfulness. Even in anonymity, the samurai carried their family's identity literally against their skin, proving that honor was not only something to be shown, but also something to be silently guarded. Samurai warriors sometimes fasted before combat to sharpen focus. Before entering battle, some samurai practiced fasting. By abstaining from food, they believed the body became lighter, the mind clearer, and the spirit sharper. Hunger was seen not as weakness, but as discipline, teaching self-control and resilience. A fasting warrior could also move more easily, unburdened by a full stomach, ready for sudden exertion. The practice had spiritual dimensions as well, echoing Buddhist and Shinto traditions that linked purification with abstinence. Going into battle after fasting symbolized both readiness and resolve, a statement that the warrior was already detached from comfort, prepared to face hardship and death. For enemies, the sight of calm, ascetic warriors was unsettling, a reminder that they faced opponents who had already conquered their own fears. Fasting was thus more than preparation of the body, it was preparation of the soul, aligning inner strength with outward determination. Samurai sometimes carried medicine pouches on the battlefield. Samurai prepared for more than combat when marching into battle. Many carried small medicine pouches tucked into their armor, filled with herbs, powders, and bandages. These kits could treat wounds, stop bleeding, or ease pain after injury. Some contained charms or religious tokens as well, blurring the line between practical aid and spiritual protection. In a world without modern medicine, even minor injuries could prove fatal, so carrying remedies was a matter of survival. For a warrior, tending the body was as vital as sharpening a blade. Chronicles mention mixtures to boost energy, calm nerves, or protect against infection. The sight of these pouches reveals the samurai's awareness that war was not only about courage, but also endurance. On the battlefield, medicine was as important as steel, and survival often depended on the foresight to carry healing in the midst of destruction. Samurai armor could weigh up to 60 pounds. A full suit of samurai armor was a masterpiece of engineering, but it was not light. Depending on the design, it could weigh as much as 60 pounds. The armor was carefully balanced, distributing weight across the body so that a warrior could still move quickly, ride a horse, or fight effectively. Plates of iron or steel were laced together with silk cords, supported by lacquered leather, creating a system both flexible and strong. The burden of carrying such weight required training and endurance, but it also created a sense of transformation. When fully armored, a samurai became something more than a man, a figure encased in centuries of tradition and protection. Despite the heaviness, the suits were designed for mobility, allowing warriors to kneel, draw, and strike. The armor's weight was a constant reminder of the discipline required to live the life of a samurai. Some samurai practiced fighting in rivers and swamps. Battles in Japan were not always fought on dry fields. Rivers, marshes, and swamps could become battlegrounds, and samurai trained to fight in such environments. Warriors learned to wade through water in armor, to keep balance on slippery ground, and to strike while half submerged. Spears and polearms were especially useful, giving reach even when mobility was slowed. Fighting in water tested endurance as much as skill. Armor grew heavy when soaked, weapons dragged in the current, and footing was uncertain. Training in these conditions ensured that samurai were prepared for any situation, turning nature itself into part of their practice. Stories tell of duels fought in rivers, where splashing water mingled with the clash of steel. For the samurai, mastery meant not only excelling in ideal conditions, but also remaining unshaken in chaos. To train in rivers was to accept that war respected no boundaries of terrain. Samurai trained in swimming with armor to escape drowning. Armor was both protection and danger. In water, its weight could drag a warrior down, making drowning a real threat. To counter this, samurai practiced swimming while wearing armor, building the strength to keep themselves afloat despite the burden. Some clans trained in castle moats or rivers, testing techniques for survival. Warriors learned to move slowly, using controlled strokes, or to shed certain pieces of armor quickly if needed. The training was grueling, demanding both physical power and calm focus. It was also practical. Many battles took place near rivers or involved sieges where crossing water was unavoidable. A samurai who panicked in water risked not only his life, but the honor of his clan. Swimming in armor was thus a way of proving mastery over both body and fear, showing that even the most dangerous conditions could not overwhelm discipline. Some swords were polished so sharply they could split hair. The sharpness of a samurai's blade was legendary. Skilled polishers could refine the edge until it was so fine it could slice a strand of hair dropped onto it. The polishing process was itself an art, using different grades of stones over weeks to bring out both sharpness and beauty. A master polisher revealed the blade's patterns, the shimmering Haman line, while ensuring the edge was as lethal as possible. For samurai, a well-polished sword was not only a weapon, but a reflection of their honor. The sight of a blade gleaming with near-mirror brightness spoke of discipline and care. To test sharpness on hair was symbolic as much as practical, proof that perfection had been achieved. Such swords were not merely tools of battle, they were objects of awe, embodying both artistry and the terrifying potential of steel honed to absolute precision. Some swordsmiths refused to sell blades to enemies of their clan. Swordsmiths were not just craftsmen, they were guardians of reputation. Many took deep pride in their work, believing their blades carried not only skill, but also spirit. Some refused to sell to clans considered enemies, fearing that their art would be turned against their own people. In certain cases, smiths swore loyalty directly to a lord, making swords exclusively for his retainers. The decision was practical as well as symbolic. If a sword bore a maker's signature, its use in dishonorable acts would reflect on the smith's name. Refusing to arm rivals protected both reputation and loyalty. This bond between craftsman and warrior reveals the depth of trust within samurai culture. A sword was not simply bought, it was bestowed, linking smith and wielder in shared responsibility. In this way, even the act of forging and selling a blade was guided by honor. Samurai sometimes fought duels at night under lantern light. While many imagined samurai duels in bright fields or open courtyards, some were fought at night, illuminated only by the soft glow of lanterns. These nighttime encounters carried an eerie atmosphere. Shadows flickered, light shifted with the wind, and every movement became harder to read. Warriors had to rely on instinct and heightened senses, making the duels as much a test of perception as skill. In such dim conditions, silence was broken only by the sound of blades meeting. The tension was extraordinary. Even spectators described the scenes as unforgettable. Night duels often carried an added sense of danger, for visibility was limited and missteps were easy. Yet for the samurai, they also symbolized courage. To face an opponent in the uncertain glow of lantern light was to show absolute readiness, proving that honor was not bound to time, place, or circumstance. They trained in both mounted combat and hand-to-hand grappling. Samurai education was comprehensive. Warriors trained not only in swordsmanship and archery, but also in mounted combat and bare-handed grappling. Riding skills were crucial for charging and retreating, while wrestling techniques, known as jujutsu, were vital when weapons were lost. Jujutsu taught leverage, locks, and throws that could disable an opponent even in armor. Combining mounted combat with grappling gave the samurai adaptability across situations, from duels to chaotic battlefield scrambles. A warrior might begin on horseback with bow or spear, dismount to fight with sword, and if disarmed, continue with hands alone. This breadth of training reflected their belief that discipline must prepare them for every possibility. The blending of horse, weapon, and body created warriors who were versatile and resilient. To be a samurai was not to rely on one skill, but to embody mastery in many forms of combat. Samurai armor included thigh guards to protect horse riders. Mounted samurai needed protection beyond the chest and arms. Armor often included large thigh guards, or heidate, which were worn over trousers. These consisted of cloth panels lined with small plates of iron or leather, arranged to flex with the rider's movements. They protected the thighs from arrows, swords, and even the bite of enemy horses. While they could be cumbersome on foot, in the saddle they were essential, covering a vulnerable part of the body exposed while riding. Like other armor, heidate were sometimes decorated with clan symbols or patterns, blending practicality with identity. Their presence shows how carefully samurai armor was designed, not just for single combat, but for life on horseback. Every piece served a purpose, protecting warriors in the specific conditions they faced. Even the legs, often overlooked in armor, received careful attention in the samurai's pursuit of survival and honor. Some samurai wore armor decorated with gold and silver. While many suits of samurai armor were built for function, others were dazzling works of art. Wealthy lords and high-ranking warriors sometimes commissioned armor decorated with gold or silver leaf, applied to helmets, breastplates, or trim. These shining surfaces caught the light of sun or torch, making the wearer stand out on the battlefield. Such decoration was not mere vanity, it was a statement of status and authority. In feudal Japan, appearance could inspire troops and intimidate enemies as powerfully as weapons. Gleaming armor announced wealth and prestige, reminding everyone who commanded loyalty. At the same time, the use of precious metals carried spiritual meaning, linking the warrior to purity and divine favor. Even in war, beauty mattered. Samurai armor reflected not only the practical demands of survival, but also the cultural belief that strength and elegance should always walk side by side. Samurai wore sandals made of straw even in battle. The footwear of the samurai was far simpler than the elaborate armor worn above it. Many went into battle wearing sandals made of woven straw, called waraji. Lightweight and inexpensive, they allowed warriors to move quickly and quietly across fields, forests, or castle grounds. The simplicity came with drawbacks. They wore out quickly, sometimes after only a single day of marching. Armies carried extra pairs, and attendants followed samurai with bundles of replacements tied at their waists. Despite their fragility, waraji reflected the samurai ideal of practicality. A warrior did not need gold or leather when straw could serve the purpose. The sandals were part of the larger culture of endurance, proof that elegance could be found in resilience. Even the greatest lords once stood in shoes made of grass, walking into history on soles woven by hand. Some samurai went into battle barefoot for better grip. Not all samurai wore sandals in combat. Some preferred to fight barefoot, believing it gave them stronger footing on muddy, uneven, or slippery ground. Bare feet allowed them to grip surfaces more firmly, especially in Japan's humid climate, where sandals could slide on wet soil. Training barefoot was common from childhood, so many warriors felt natural balance and strength without footwear. Going barefoot was also symbolic, a sign of toughness and readiness to endure discomfort. In some accounts, samurai removed their sandals before duels, stripping down to the essentials in preparation for life-or-death combat. The act suggested that skill and confidence mattered more than material protection. Bare feet were not weakness, but rather proof of discipline. On the battlefield, where every step could decide survival, the choice to go without sandals showed how deeply samurai trusted in their own bodies as much as their weapons. Other armor was built silent, designed for stealth attacks. While some samurai armor jingled loudly to intimidate, others wore suits designed to make no sound at all. These silent armors minimized the use of metal fittings, with plates tied together using cords or hidden hinges. Warriors dressed this way could move through the night without alerting enemies, making them ideal for ambushes or surprise raids. The contrast between noisy armor and quiet armor reflected two sides of warfare: psychological intimidation versus stealth and cunning. Silent armor allowed a warrior to blend into darkness, appearing suddenly like a phantom. Chronicles tell of night attacks where enemies awoke surrounded, having never heard the approach of stealth-clad samurai. The existence of such designs shows that samurai warfare was far more complex than duels in daylight. Victory could depend on shadows, silence, and subtle movement, just as much as on open displays of force. Samurai often trained with spears as much as with swords. Although the sword became the symbol of the samurai, it was not always their primary weapon. The spear, or yari, was often more practical in large-scale battles. Its long reach allowed samurai to keep enemies at a distance, fight against cavalry, and maintain formations in the chaos of war. Warriors trained extensively with spears, practicing thrusts, sweeps, and counters with as much devotion as swordsmanship. The Yari also worked well in group combat, where lines of spearmen could act as a single wall of steel. In many wars, spears claimed more lives than swords. For the samurai, skill meant versatility. To master both blade and spear was to be prepared for any battlefield. The later rise of the sword as the symbol of their class was less about practicality and more about philosophy. Yet behind that image stood centuries of warriors who trusted the Yari first. Some spears were over 4 meters long and hard to block. Samurai spears came in many forms, but some were extraordinarily long, reaching lengths of more than 4 meters. These massive weapons turned a single warrior into a living barrier. With such reach, a samurai could strike opponents before they came close, holding entire groups at bay. In cavalry battles, the length gave an advantage against charging horses, piercing through armor or disrupting momentum. Fighting with a spear of this size required strength and skill, as balance and control were difficult. Yet in trained hands, the weapon was devastating. These oversized Yari shifted the dynamic of battle, turning distance itself into a weapon. Their existence reminds us that samurai warfare was not only about individual duels, but also about formations and tactics. A 4-meter spear was less a personal blade than a tool of the battlefield, extending the warrior's power far beyond arm's reach. Samurai armor was designed to be dismantled quickly for repairs. Samurai armor may look permanent and rigid, but it was built to be taken apart. The plates were laced together with silk cords that could be untied, allowing pieces to be removed, replaced, or repaired. On long campaigns, this flexibility was vital. Damaged armor could be mended in camp, and adjustments could be made for comfort or weather. This modular design also made armor easier to transport, as suits could be broken down and packed into smaller bundles. The practicality reveals how samurai life was not only about battle, but also about preparation and care for equipment. Armor was a companion, requiring maintenance and attention like a trusted horse or sword. The ability to dismantle and restore it quickly gave warriors confidence, knowing that their protection could always be renewed. What appears as unbroken steel was, in truth, a living system of parts. Some helmets contained hidden messages from ancestors. Inside the metal or lining of some helmets, samurai families placed inscriptions, prayers, or messages from ancestors. These hidden words were not meant for public display, but for the warrior alone, pressed close against the head with every movement. They might include blessings, warnings, or reminders of family duty. Knowing that such words were literally carried into battle must have been powerful, strengthening resolve in moments of fear. For some, it was as though the voices of generations whispered from within the helmet, guiding and protecting the warrior. This practice shows how deeply spiritual and familial connections were woven into samurai life. A helmet was not only armor, it was a vessel for memory and legacy. Even as steel guarded the body, the words of ancestors guarded the spirit, ensuring that no samurai entered battle entirely alone. Samurai banners were so large, they needed assistance to carry. Banners, or nobori, were essential symbols of identity on the battlefield. Some were so enormous that they had to be supported by attendants who walked alongside the warrior. These towering flags displayed clan crests, mottos, or symbols, rising above the chaos of combat as beacons of loyalty. The size made them visible across fields, allowing troops to rally and commanders to signal orders. For the samurai who bore them, banners were both pride and burden. To lose one was shameful, but to hold it aloft meant carrying the weight of the entire clan's honor. Attendants tasked with carrying or supporting these massive banners shared in the risks of battle, often targeted by enemies who sought to demoralize opposing forces. In this way, the banner was more than fabric. It was a living standard, requiring human strength to uphold the identity of a family in war. Samurai archers practiced hitting targets in complete darkness. Archery training was not limited to daylight. Some samurai practiced in total darkness, firing arrows by instinct and by sound alone. The purpose was not to strike invisible enemies, but to sharpen awareness and concentration. In darkness, the archer relied on rhythm, breath, and inner calm, letting the bow become an extension of the body. This practice reflected the Zen influence on warrior training, teaching that clarity came not from sight, but from stillness of mind. On battlefields, such training proved useful during night raids or in the smoke of sieges, where vision was obscured. An archer who could remain steady in darkness was prepared for chaos in any form. The exercise became a meditation as much as a skill, turning archery into a path of discipline where even the unseen could be struck with precision born of inner quiet. Some helmets were designed to whistle in the wind to intimidate. Among the more unusual designs of samurai armor were helmets crafted with hollow openings or shapes that whistled when wind passed through them. As warriors rode into battle, these helmets produced eerie sounds, howls, whistles, or wails that seemed unnatural. The noise carried across fields, unnerving opponents, and adding to the spectacle of war. Combined with masks, banners, and armor, the whistling helmets transformed samurai into figures that seemed larger than life, almost otherworldly. To face such a warrior was to confront not only a man, but the aura he projected. The designs remind us that warfare was not only about weapons, but about controlling perception. By turning wind into sound, the helmet became more than protection. It was an instrument of intimidation, amplifying the presence of the warrior who wore it. Even nature itself could be harnessed as part of the performance of battle. Samurai sometimes carried conch shells to signal troops in battle. On the battlefield, communication was as vital as skill with the sword. Among the tools used for signaling was the conch shell, known as a horogai. When blown, it produced a deep, resonant sound that could carry across valleys and echo through mountains. Different tones or rhythms conveyed commands to advance, to retreat, or to regroup. The sound of the conch was both practical and symbolic, evoking the call of Buddhist monks who also used shells in ritual. For samurai, it linked the sacred and the martial, turning a natural object into a voice of war. Hearing the mournful call in the chaos of combat must have been unforgettable, both a rallying cry and a reminder of order amidst confusion. The conch shell shows that samurai warfare relied not only on steel, but on sound, binding armies together through waves of breath and echo. Some warriors wore charms and amulets sewn into their armor. Beyond steel and silk, many samurai carried protection of another kind, charms and amulets hidden within their armor. These tokens, often inscribed with Buddhist sutras or Shinto prayers, were sewn into linings or tucked into pockets close to the body. Some were small wooden plaques, others folded paper prayers or tiny figurines. Each represented a connection to faith, family, or personal resolve. For warriors facing death, these charms provided comfort, a belief that unseen forces shielded them. Some charms were inherited from parents or ancestors, carrying not only spiritual strength, but the weight of lineage. In this way, armor became more than physical protection. It became a vessel for faith, blending material defense with unseen guardianship. The presence of such amulets reveals how deeply spiritual life was interwoven with war, reminding us that every clash of swords carried invisible prayers sewn into steel. Samurai swords were often tested on bundles of straw and bamboo, Before a blade was carried into battle, it was often tested. Samurai used bundles of rolled straw or stalks of bamboo as stand-ins for flesh and bone. Striking these targets with precision revealed whether the edge was sharp, the cut clean, and the balance correct. Known as tameshigiri, the practice demanded both strength and perfect form. Masters could slice through several layers at once, demonstrating the harmony of sword and swordsman. For the smith, these tests were proof of craftsmanship for the warrior, proof of readiness. Watching a clean cut through thick bundles was as much a ritual of reassurance as it was a trial of skill. Though far less grim than tests on criminals, which also occurred, straw and bamboo allowed endless practice. Each stroke against the bundle was a reminder that a sword was not only an emblem of honor, but a finely honed instrument of death. Swordmasters could slice a falling arrow in mid-air. Legends tell of swordmasters so skilled that they could slice a flying arrow in two. These demonstrations, whether in training halls or on battlefields, showcased extraordinary reflexes and precision. The feat required not only timing, but also perfect awareness of distance and motion. An arrow traveling at great speed left almost no margin for error, yet masters trained until the impossible seemed routine. Such displays were more than spectacle. They symbolized the peak of discipline, where instinct replaced thought and the blade became an extension of the body. Observers saw in these moments the embodiment of Bushido, clarity, fearlessness, and mastery beyond ordinary human limits. Whether every story was literal truth or partly legend, the image endures. The vision of a samurai calmly cutting an arrow from the air captures the essence of a warrior who stood poised against danger with unshakable serenity. Some samurai trained with both right and left hands to avoid weakness. Most warriors favored one dominant hand, but some samurai trained to wield their weapons with either. Practicing ambidexterity ensured that if one arm was injured, the other could still fight effectively. It also allowed surprise in duels, where switching hands could disrupt an opponent's rhythm. Training with both sides demanded patience, as it forced the body to relearn movements and refine coordination. For some, it was a way of achieving greater balance, not only physically but mentally, embodying the ideal of harmony. In battle, the ability to adapt instantly to any circumstance often decided survival. Ambidextrous warriors demonstrated the principle that a true samurai left no weakness unaddressed. To master both hands was to prove absolute dedication, ensuring that even in injury or exhaustion, the warrior's strength endured. The lesson was clear. Resilience is built by preparing for every possibility, even the most unlikely. Lacquer made armor resistant to fire, as well as rain. Samurai armor was often coated in lacquer, a glossy substance derived from tree sap. At first glance, it gave armor a polished beauty, but its purpose was far more practical. Lacquer made the plates resistant to water, preventing rust, and it also offered surprising protection against fire. In sieges, when flaming arrows or burning oil might rain down, lacquered armor reduced the risk of catching flame. The coating also strengthened the underlying material, binding silk cords and leather together. Applying lacquer was a meticulous process, with multiple layers brushed on and left to cure over time. The result was armor that could withstand the elements as well as the enemy. To wear lacquered armor was to carry both protection and elegance, a fusion of nature's resilience and human craft. Even in the heat of war, the samurai carried a subtle shield born from trees and patience. Some samurai became monks after retiring from battle. When the clamor of war ended, some samurai sought peace in a very different life. Retiring from service, they shaved their heads, donned robes, and became monks. The transition was not seen as contradiction, but as completion. Having faced death, they turned to contemplation of life. Buddhist temples welcomed these warriors, who often brought discipline, leadership, and resources to the monastic world. Some became teachers, others poets, and a few continued to influence politics from within religious orders. The shift reflected the samurai belief that strength must be balanced with reflection. A life of violence could be followed by a life of meditation. These men carried their experiences into prayer, finding meaning in silence after years of battle. Their path shows that even within the strict codes of Bushido, there was room for transformation, from sword to sutra, from warrior to monk. Even after their decline, samurai remained a symbol of honor in Japan. By the late 19th century, the samurai as a class no longer existed. Yet their image endured, woven deeply into Japan's cultural identity. The ideals of loyalty, courage, and discipline remained touchstones long after the warriors themselves had laid down their swords. Plays, novels, and later films retold their stories, elevating figures like Miyamoto Musashi or the 47 Ronin into enduring legends. The samurai became symbols of national pride, representing a spirit of resilience that shaped Japan's modernization. Even today, the silhouette of armor or the curve of a katana carries an aura of honor and tradition. The persistence of their image shows that the samurai transcended history. Though their role ended, their memory became timeless, a mirror of values that Japan continued to hold dear. The warrior class dissolved, but the spirit of the samurai never truly left the nation's soul. Samurai culture deeply shaped Japan's schools, art, and even business ethics today. The influence of the samurai stretched far beyond the battlefield. Their values of discipline, loyalty, and perseverance filtered into Japanese society in lasting ways. Schools adopted principles of rigorous training, respect for teachers, and moral development inspired by Bushido. Art and literature reflected samurai themes of impermanence, duty, and harmony. Even in modern business culture, echoes of samurai ethics remain: loyalty to a company, respect for hierarchy, and dedication to collective success. This legacy reveals how the warrior class shaped not only politics and war, but the very character of Japanese life. The ideals they lived by, sometimes harsh and unforgiving, also offered stability and purpose. In this way, the samurai's influence endured not through swords, but through ideas. Their impact continues quietly in classrooms, offices, and cultural practices, centuries after their last battles were fought. Samurai were forbidden from farming, forcing them to rely on stipends. Unlike peasants who worked the land or merchants who traded goods, samurai were forbidden from farming or engaging in commerce. Instead, they relied on stipends provided by their lords, usually in the form of rice. This system ensured their loyalty, but also tied their fortunes to the stability of their domain. In times of abundance, stipends supported a comfortable life. In times of hardship, many samurai faced poverty. Some became scholars, teachers, or bureaucrats to supplement their income, but the prohibition on farming kept them distinct as a warrior class. The rule reinforced the rigid structure of feudal Japan, where each group had defined roles. Yet it also revealed the vulnerability of the samurai, who depended entirely on their lords for survival. The image of fearless warriors contrasts with this reality. Many lived precariously, bound by honor but dependent on the rice fields they could never work themselves. And so, our journey through the world of the samurai comes to a close. We have walked alongside warriors who lived by the sword, who wore armor adorned with prayers and crests, and who carried both elegance and terror into battle. We have seen their discipline extend into poetry and calligraphy, into tea ceremonies and meditation, reminding us that the way of the warrior was never only about combat. It was about living a life of balance, of devotion, of presence. The echoes of their world still linger in Japan's castles, in its art, and in the ideals that continue to shape its culture. Even centuries after their decline, the image of the samurai endures, like a lantern glowing softly in memory. They are both history and legend, figures of steel and silence, carrying stories that reach across time. As you drift toward rest, let these echoes fade gently into dreams. Imagine the whisper of straw sandals on old stone paths, the glimmer of moonlight across lacquered armor, the quiet breath before the draw of a blade. Feel the weight of the centuries soften and fall away until only calm remains. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of 100 fascinating facts about the samurai. If you enjoyed this journey, I invite you to subscribe, leave a comment, or share your thoughts. But for now, let those ideas rest. They will be waiting for you tomorrow. For tonight, there is nothing more to do, and nowhere you need to be. The stories have been told, the warriors have bowed their heads, and the night welcomes you into its stillness. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let yourself drift. Sleep well, and good night.